Hello and welcome to this podcast. I'm Lee Drake, and today we are going to discuss Mason Rudolph and James Washington and what may be their future in the NFL. They were recently drafted during the 2018 NFL Draft by Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Washington went in the second round, and Rudolph went in the third round. And Rudolph and Washington during the 2017 season alone connected 74 times for 1,549 yards and 15 touchdowns. So if you look at it from a statistics standpoint, not only did Washington get the Biletnikoff Award, which is given to the most outstanding receiver in college football, but also he's got quite the reputation, not just in the Big 12 Conference, but nationally. And the 2018 NFL Draft, you could say, kind of played down receivers in general, as Calvin Ridley and DJ Ward were the first two receivers picked up during the draft. And Washington going in the second round to the Steelers was, many think, to be a good choice by the organization, but definitely a better choice in the fact that they were actually able to pick up Rudolph in the third. And that's very uncommon in the NFL to see duos of wide receivers and quarterbacks actually get drafted or end up, whether it be years down the road after they actually go pro, but actually end up on the same team. An example of that was Mike Evans and Johnny Manziel. Mike Evans is still playing for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Johnny and Mike, whenever they got drafted, many speculated that down the road, perhaps, they would end up on the same team and would be just as big of a threat, if not better, than they were at Texas A&M. However, that did not happen, but there is the serious potential for that to happen with Mason and James. And you can simply base that on the fact that, there's not the hype about either one of them. They aren't under as much pressure, and they're at a successful organization that already has an offense in place that is expected to put up high numbers. They did in 2017, and they have mentors both for Mason and James. James, of course, will play alongside and practice alongside Antonio Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster, whereas Mason will be mentored by Ben Roethlisberger, who's been in the league for numerous years. He's got playoff experience, and he knows what he's doing, and he's very comfortable in the NFL. He's seen about every coverage, every defense, played against the best players, and whenever you look at it from a fundamental standpoint, Mason in college, he has a rifle for an arm, but oftentimes it would get away from him. He'd overthrow some routes to the sidelines and sometimes leave the receivers hanging out to dry a little bit. And that really got frustrating for not only Mason, but the receivers. And whenever you look at it, Oklahoma State had two primary guys in 2017, James being number one and Marcell Ateman being number two, and Ateman got picked up by the Raiders. But whenever you look at James Washington, he kind of mirrors Antonio Brown's fundamentals or characteristics in a way that yes, Antonio Brown is very fast, but Brown burns defenses and burns defensive backs with his quickness off the line of scrimmage and quickness whenever he cuts on his routes. Washington is the same way. Washington is not blistering fast. He's not Tyreek Hill. He's not Dez Bryant. But he is, he doesn't have the capability that Dez had, nor does he have the athletic ability that simply, whenever you look at it, during the combine, Dez shocked scouts. Well, Washington isn't that guy that's going to do that, and he's not going to go up and snag balls out of the air like Dez did his first few years in the NFL. However, Washington is a guy that he accelerates greatly downfield whenever he gets the ball in his hands, and he is shifty, but he's quick, and that is how he gets open. During his time at Oklahoma State University, he was bracketed every game for 2 years, 2016 and 17, and even during his freshman year in 2014, he showed his potential, especially in the Bedlam game against Oklahoma, whenever it was Mason's first start, and he started in Norman, and it was the Cowboys' last win in Norman, and he targeted James Washington a couple times, and both of them showed the capabilities and the kind of the I guess the light in the tunnel for Oklahoma State fans is that year was a rough year. They did get a win over Oklahoma, but ultimately, it wasn't what they had been used to coming after, the recruiting and the familiarity with guys like Des Bryant, Zach Robinson, Justin Blackman, and Brandon Whedon. They didn't have that duo, but they saw something that would be special, and that's what Mike Tomlin and the Steelers saw, picking both of them up in this year's draft, and ultimately, Antonio Brown's going to be able to teach James a lot, and so is Juju Smith-Schuster. And whenever you watch Antonio play and you see him cut out of his routes, whether it be a post route, a slant route, or an out route, it looks, James Washington looks similar to that. James has very quick feet. Many would say it's undoubtedly a fact that James is undersized, especially for an NFL receiver at only 6 feet tall. But he does a great job of using his body to protect the ball and get the defender out of position, and he does an even better job of yards after catch. And he's not the fastest guy out there, but he's fast enough that whenever he gets out in the open field, he can make a guy miss after he gets the ball in his hands, and his cuts are what create the initial separation. And once he cuts on you, he's got another 15 to 20 yards at least after the catch until he gets tackled, if not a touchdown. He's not the fastest, but he's not the slowest. And so James will have a great future, I think, in Pittsburgh. He's with an organization that knows what they're doing. They know what their game plan is. And it's the same thing for Mason Rudolph. Mason's going to be mentored by Ben. And who knows, years down the road, nobody can help but think that Mike Tomlin and the Steelers thought, look at these guys in college. If we help them out and we train them and we mentor them with the guys we already have in place, this could be our future, and it very well might be if they keep both players on the team and in the organization. It might be a Rudolph to Washington for a Steelers touchdown 4 years from now. Might even be sooner than that. It very well could be. Washington will probably get some playing time this next year if everything goes well over the summer and in the training camp. But nobody can – you cannot – predict or assure that will be the case, but you cannot help but think or toss around the idea that, man, these guys, Washington, Biletnikoff Award winner, Mason Rudolph, he's got a rifle for an arm. If he can learn to control that and not lock down one receiver, you can't help but think that these guys might be the future of the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. Of course, you can't think that they're going to get rid of Antonio Brown, but with Brown always getting double covered and bracketed every game, Washington has a lot of room for freedom, and he has a lot of room to get some yards after the catch and get a lot of touchdowns in Pittsburgh. So only 2018 will tell, and training camp is still ahead. They've still got to get through that and stay healthy and ultimately get along with everybody on the team and their owners or the owner. And who knows? It might be Rudolph to Washington, or it could be a bust. But ultimately, that's why the Steelers picked him up. They saw the potential, and in 3 years, it could be Rudolph taking the snaps under center or in the shotgun for Tomlin in the offense. That is all for today. Wish you a good afternoon, and look out for the Cowboys in 2018. And we'll see where Rudolph and Washington end up and how their careers fold out and play out in Pittsburgh.